Joshua and his people are finally in the promised land. Let the shouts ring out. Bang your pots and pans. Open all the windows of the tents. Rejoice. Rejoice. Joy has come in the morning. They had crossed over, and they were looking with their eyes at the goodness God had promised them. Moses had led them for 40 years as they journeyed in the wilderness, a necessary, though completely unpleasant, step toward freedom. By most accounts, the 40 years in the wilderness was necessary for the people to let go of their memories of Egypt and of slavery, to be ready to be free, to come together as a new people united in a common plight. And as scripture tells, for the old folks to have visions and the young folks to dream dreams of that promised land. Those ancient Hebrews had to learn what it really meant to be a people united, not divided, and it was hard, but they did it. Such a trying time those 40 years were that some did not make it to the promised land as much as they might have wanted or have tried. Moses died before the nation, for that's what they had become. The people had become a nation. They crossed over into the land, but Moses did not. No doubt others died along the way as well. After Moses' death, Joshua is appointed leader to bring God's people into their new home, a home God tells them is theirs, though there is the slight problem that there are already some other people that live there and were understandably a little perplexed at these strangers coming to take their land. God, however, keeps the divine promise, and this land is given to God's people, and Joshua is appointed their leader. Whether through 5 long days and sleepless nights this week, or maybe through 4 long years and endless tweets, perhaps some of you this morning are feeling like you're standing on a mountaintop place, peering over at a land of milk and honey. Whatever your political affiliation, and whichever way you voted this year, I think we might all come to see the past 4 years as a wilderness time for us and for our fellow Americans. These years, this administration certainly bear little resemblance to other years and other administrations who had come before. Governments that led with diplomacy and dignity, decorum, the weight of an office upon them. For well over 200 years, the office of the President of these United States has been a symbol of integrity, and the men who have occupied it may not have all lived up to this lofty goal personally, but I do believe that most of them tried. Over 200 years of Republican leaders, of Democratic leaders, presidents have governed with a steady hand and a faithful heart and a keen mind. And then, somehow, we started going off the rails. Out to the wilderness we went. What was it, I wonder? Was it that a Black man of great intellect and outstanding moral character had occupied the White House for 8 years? Was that too much for the sin of America's racism to bear? Was it that a woman, a white woman, a lifelong public servant of incredible intellect and the most distinguished resume of any presidential candidate ever, was it that she was nominated and that she ran 4 years ago? Was a woman, was it that woman that was too much for American patriarchy? What landed us in the unknown and strange land of these past 4 years? Surely they were strange. And surely it's more complicated than either of these assessments on their own. But let us not think that the snares of racism and sexism haven't caught us again and again. 4 years where treaties built over decades were casually dismissed and alliances built over centuries undermined. 4 years of incredible economic advantages for a few that were agreed to by many because of the fallacy of the American dream that one day it would be theirs too. 4 years of name-calling, belittling, and bullying. This was not the office of the president the framers had in mind. This was not the leader God had in mind. This was an all too human leader elected by a nation lost in a wilderness, far from the realm of God, who had somehow come to believe that the path to greatness was one of going back rather than forward. If you've been questioning whether or not these years were wilderness years, this is how you know for sure. This is how you know that it was a wilderness time, when half the country believes that progress is about going back to greatness, while the other half of the country believes our best days are still to come. Boy, are we lost. Pull over. Get directions, America. You aren't going in the right direction. Maybe we're still lost. Not out of the woods yet. I am no prophet, nor do I possess a crystal ball, but I do believe that America's greatness is a still unfulfilled promise, one that lies ahead in the promised land, not back in the history of wilderness, of racism, or of sexism. 5 long days, 4 long years, 40 years in the wilderness. How does this time transform us? Is there good that may come from it? How did it transform the Hebrews then? What can it do for us now? Long ago, in a time before they crossed over into the promised land, the ancestors of the ancient Hebrews lived in another land, and they served other gods. And when they entered the promised land, they had a choice to make. Would they keep serving those other gods, those false gods, those idols they had built? Or would they remember the one true God, the God of their deliverance, the God of their salvation? As election season draws to a close, as we stand on a high place and look toward a future, we have no delusion that it will be a land all of peaches and cream. The path from here to there is still long. The last leg of a race always feels that way. And there are false gods who pull our attention all around us. What will we serve? Which God will you follow? A God that calls us all to be one, to become a nation with eyes fixed on eternal truths and not human folly? That's our God. Will we be able to put aside the fighting and the division? Red or blue, might our people all come to be one? Will we do the work? Have the difficult conversations? Make Thanksgiving a wholly uncomfortable affair to speak the truth to that cousin we love and yet need to tell a thing or two in order to be united and truthful and just? And will we build and enter a great land of our own as promised by God? If this is what we want to do, I think it's what we want to do. I hope it's what we want to do. There are many gods we'll have to leave behind, many idols we've needed to topple for many years, and many systems we'll need to at last make right. This is a time of leaving petty ills aside, of toppling idols, of making right all that is wrong. Are we ready to put aside the idol of America's greatness and start working for America's promise? Are we ready to stop serving the God of whiteness and start serving a God of diversity and equity and inclusion? Is patriarchy a God best left on this side of the river before we cross over into the new land? And how about the wicked God of a penal system that remains a living remnant of chattel slavery in a land where justice for all has yet to be realized? There is a God alluring and powerful to so many of us. The God of capitalism is one we'll need to wrestle to the ground if we really want to serve the one true God of all creation, the God of heaven and earth, don't you think? And no one said these false gods were going to be easy to take on, nor have any of us even agreed that this incomplete and partial list of me but another human is a good start or a bad one or a way forward or back. How could we know? We've been in the wilderness. We've been here for too long. As the Hebrews stood in the promised land looking at Joshua for leadership and guidance in a new era, Joshua had some questions for his people. He had gathered his cabinet. He gathered leaders and elders, officers of the Israel nation. And he says to them, are you ready to put away your old gods? Are you going to stop serving those idols and start worshiping the God of your deliverance, the God who answered your prayers and who brought you to this day? Yes, the people say. Far be it from us to serve other gods, they all echo. Truly, truly, Joshua pushes. Are you sure? Are you ready? Yes, the people reply. Yes, we will serve the Lord. It must have been quite a sight there on the plain of that holy land that day. I get chills thinking about the inauguration of this nation that Joshua is forming, about the promise, about the oath the people are swearing as they come to see a day some of them must have thought would never come. They swear their allegiance to be God's and to become God's people again, to renew their faith. And they vow to be a nation indivisible. They vow to leave the small gods, the evils and temptations of other times, and to put their trust in God alone. Joshua hears his people's promise, and he calls their attention to what it is they're doing and what they have done. Let it be known, you can hear him begin, that you are witnesses of what you are doing. You are a witness of the promise you are making. And you are a witness of the hope and faith you profess. We are, they reply. We are witnesses, they respond. And they are. Joshua seals this covenant, and the new and good leader that he is, he sets about making statutes and ordinances. He gets right to work to create justice and law and dignity among these now formerly wilderness people. And us? And you? Are you ready to put aside the false ways and idols of the past? Are we ready to live a life showing God's goodness and mercy, making justice for the least among us our priority, and of building a nation of integrity and liberty and justice for all? Is this a pledge we, as people of faith, are willing to make? We stand on the plain in the bright sun of this day. Will we say yes when God calls us to serve God alone? Is our allegiance to God and to this republic for which we will stand as laborers and as allies and friends and neighbors to all in need? Will our faith inspire our daily actions, or will we limit it to Sunday morning? Will we look to our God in times of both joy and peril for both help and comfort? Will we trust that God is our God and we are God's people? Do you see the answered prayers in our midst this morning? Do we perceive the deliverance and the salvation that God has granted, that God grants again and again? Are we witnesses of these things? Yes. Yes, we are witnesses. We are a witness of a God who surpasses all human understanding. We are witnesses of a God of truth and of power, which means a God of diversity and of strength. Let our daughters be witnesses of yet another glass ceiling shattered, and may our sons be witnesses to humility. Let our congregation be witnesses to the Upper West Side, and wherever you are on this day, let you be a witness of the voice faith has in our society and in the place of God among all of us. Let us older folk be witnesses to the younger folks, and let the younger folks teach us all a thing or two we wish we would have learned earlier. Let us be witnesses of the truth the psalmist knows. We will witness and will tell, as the psalmist tells, we will tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord. And we will tell these things to our children, and that they may put their hope in God. We are witnesses of this day, a day when we gather together and look at the land around us as one of promise and abundance and plenty. Enough for all, scarcity for none. This is a promise of God's. Are we witnesses? Yes, we are witnesses. We are witnesses of the prayers God has answered and witnesses of this day that has dawned. It is time to put away the false gods that we have clung to, the human leaders that have failed us, and to put our hope in God alone. For God has heard God's people and is raising up new leaders even now to restore justice among her people. What a good and great God it is we have. Let us witness to that goodness. We are witnesses of God, of all that is good. Yes, we are witnesses. Amen.